It's 7 p.m. Thursday, August 8th here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. President Moon Jae-in urges Japan to stop its trade restrictions on South Korea, warning that it's a game that can have no winner and only hurts both sides.
Japan approves the first shipment to Korea of one of the key materials it's restricting. Reports say Tokyo is trying to show that its trade curbs are not a total embargo.
Global environmental watchdogs say Japan plans to release 1 million tons of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean, strongly condemning the move that would increase the exposure to radiation in neighboring countries, especially South Korea.
And U.S. Defense Chief Mark Esper will soon land in Korea for talks with his South Korean counterpart set for tomorrow. Attention is focused on whether he will request an increase in the amount of South Korea's defense costs. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Noaram.
And I'm Han-daeun. Thanks for joining us. President Moon says the trade dispute between South Korea and Japan benefits no one and only hurts both sides.
He was speaking at a national economic meeting earlier today to draw up measures in response to Japan's trade restrictions. We begin with Arirang's Park Hee-jun at the Blue House.
President Moon Jae-in urged Japan to end this dispute that has no winner. He called on the Japanese government to call off its trade restrictions, which are hurting the economies and people of both countries.
일본이 일방적인 무역 조치로 얻는 이익이 무엇인지 잘 모르겠습니다. 설령 이익이 있다 해도 일시적인 것에 지나지 않습니다. 결국은 일본 자신을 포함한 모두가 피해자가 되는 승자 없는 게임입니다.
President Moon held his third National Economic Advisory Council meeting on Thursday, where he discussed possible countermeasures against Japan's trade restrictions with related senior officials and experts, including its Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Sang-jo and Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi. There, he criticized Japan for its contradictory behavior.
일본은 자유무역 질서의 혜택을 가장 많이 본 나라이고 자국에게 필요할 때는 자유무역주의를 적극 주장해온 나라이므로 이번 일본의 조치는 매우 이율배반적입니다.
President Moon also said Tokyo might not carry out the trade controls, meaning there may not be actual damage. According to Blue House spokesperson Ko Min-jung, he was saying that although there are export curbs on 3 high-tech materials, Japan could end up granting approval for their exports. Nevertheless, economic uncertainties remain. That's why Moon also raised the need for a response plan and diplomatic efforts. On the same day, Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Sang-jo met with executives of the country's top 5 conglomerates. He gathered the opinions of Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor, SK, LG, and Lotte on the unprecedented situation as part of government efforts to work together with businesses to overcome the difficulties. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
And at the National Economic Meeting, Vice Chair Lee Jae-min said Japan's export curbs are an attempt to rein in the South Korean economy and take away all the progress it's made. The Vice Chair said the restoration of Seoul and Tokyo bilateral ties in 1965 partially helped the economy grow, but Japan wants to keep the old vertical relationship. South Korea, he said, has started to overtake Japan in many industries under the free trade system, something the Abe administration doesn't want to continue. He also pointed out ways that political issues go beyond Japan, noting that Korea's trade depends heavily on China and its defense on the United States. South Korea's Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi has convened a meeting this morning to go over possible countermeasures to Japan's new export curbs. Detailed results are yet to be released from the closed-door meeting. The Trade Ministry says top officials have discussed whether to remove Japan from South Korea's so-called whitelist of preferential trading partners. They'll decide whether or not to change the export regulations for strategic materials headed to Japan. This could mean Japan will no longer benefit from a simplified inspection process. The National Security Council says it'll continue diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict with Japan through dialogue, while also reviewing ways to respond. A meeting was held today led by National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong. Council members closely inspected military movements in North Korea and around the peninsula, and they discussed South Korea's response. They also went over the various issues likely to be taken up by the defense ministers of South Korea and the U.S. when they meet tomorrow. They agreed to further strengthen the alliance with the U.S. to achieve complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. For the first time since the trade dispute between South Korea and Japan began, Japan gave its permission for the export of a Korea-bound key high-tech material, which was subject to stricter regulations. Our Kim Mo-kyun tells us more.
Japan's trade minister announced that Tokyo approved the shipment of an extreme ultraviolet photoresist to South Korea for the first time since it tightened export restrictions to Seoul. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Trade Minister Hiroshige Seko said that the ministry made the approval after concluding that the latest shipment posed no risk to Japan's national security.
The South Korean government has criticized Japan by saying there is an embargo on shipments. Because of this, we have decided to disclose exports that have passed through our strict examination procedure and show that we have granted approvals.
Without mentioning the specifics of the latest exports, the minister stressed that Japan is making the rare announcement because of Seoul's embargo accusations. However, Seko still warned that the trade controls with Seoul could be expanded if they detect any signs of inappropriateness with items other than the 3 announced in July. Photoresist is one of the 3 key semiconductor materials that Japan tightened its regulations for exports to South Korea on July 4th. Those tighter regulations make photoresist, fluorinated polyamides, and hydrogen fluoride subject to case-by-case inspections in order to be imported to South Korea. In response to Japan's announcement, South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun said that Tokyo's economic restrictions against Seoul are still unjustifiable.
Given that Japan is one of the countries that benefits a lot from free trade, Japan's economic restrictions on South Korea are self-contradicting. The measures are unjustifiable and not suitable for a world power like Japan. We will work to get things back to normal through diplomatic efforts.
Japanese media also reported on the latest photoresist shipment, hinting that Tokyo's latest approval signals that Japan is not banning trade with South Korea itself. The Sankei Shimbun reported that Japan is permitting exports to Korea once it confirms that there is no security threat, adding that Tokyo's tightening of trade controls on Seoul is not a trade embargo. The Yomiuri Shimbun also highlighted that the permission shows that Tokyo's export curbs are not a trade regulation and that trade will continue with South Korea if no problem has been detected during the review process. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Japan plans to release 1 million tons of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. This, according to global environmentalists who strongly condemned Japan for its irresponsible act. The life-threatening plan, if proven to be true, will not only affect Korea, but all nations surrounding the Pacific Ocean. Our Kim Da-mi reports.
Global environmental watchdogs have slammed Japan's plan to release 1 million tons of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. In an article published by The Economist, Greenpeace nuclear specialist Sean Burney said releasing wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant would increase the exposure to radiation in neighboring countries, especially South Korea. He said it will take around 17 years for all the radioactive materials in the wastewater to break down. Burney criticized the Abe administration for neglecting the development of technologies to clean up radioactive materials. He said Tokyo has now given up on providing an explanation and is rather keeping silent on the matter. According to Burney, there's no legal course of action that could stop Japan from releasing the pollutants. Earlier on Tuesday, the Greenpeace office in Seoul called Tokyo's act a crime that threatens not only the ocean near Fukushima, but also countries in Pacific Ocean. Greenpeace Korea urged the Abe administration not to cause this environmental crisis. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
South Korea's Environment Ministry says it will inspect coal imports from Japan more thoroughly. It says the stronger inspections are to check for high levels of radioactive materials and heavy metals in Japanese coal. The quarterly inspection will change to an all-inclusive examination of every shipment of imported coal. South Koreans have been boycotting travel to Japan, and in the city of Osaka, the tourism industry is reportedly feeling the heat. According to Japan's Kyodo News on Wednesday, the number of South Korean tourists visiting Osaka between June and July was down by more than 30% on year. In fact, at least one municipality in Japan is getting ready to give emergency loans to businesses affected by the loss of South Korean tourists. Officials representing Tottori Prefecture have said they will give financial support to companies to help them weather the expected impact. Meanwhile, credit card spending in Japan by South Koreans also plunged in mid to late July. According to industry data, Koreans spent around $82 million on their cards there last month. For the whole of last month, that's a rise of more than 1% from a year earlier, but spending declined significantly from the middle of July. In the fourth week, it was down by 5.3%. In the last few days of the month, the figure dropped by more than 19%. The Bank of Korea says that the U.S. China trade spat has affected South Korea's exports to a degree similar to the global financial crisis back in 2008. In its financial policy report for August, the central bank said the country's exports dropped by more than 3% in May and more than 7% in June compared to a year earlier. May was when the trade war escalated significantly. The BOK said the export decline was caused by resulting global uncertainties and that the impact was on the level of the financial crisis of 2008 and the IT stock bubble in 2000. The trade row with Japan, it said, will be another factor. On the same day, the BOK hinted at a possible rate cut this year if the situation gets worse. Meanwhile, the U.S. is calling on South Korea and Japan to find ways between them to repair their ties and make sure that security-wise they stay in close coordination with each other and with Washington. Oh Jung-hee reports.
The U.S. says it'll help to mediate the trade spat between South Korea and Japan, but the two countries need to look for a creative solution to their dispute and ensure three-way coordination remains strong. At a forum in Washington Wednesday about the South Korea-Japan trade row, Mark Napper, the State Department's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Korea and Japan, said the U.S. will continue to stay involved and is always ready to promote communication between Seoul and Tokyo. But he added there needs to be, quote, some soul-searching on recent political decisions that have hurt their trust in each other, and the two are equally responsible for improving ties. He went on to say he believes the two countries will be able to find a creative solution. As ties between Seoul and Tokyo start to worsen after Japan decided to take South Korea off its whitelist of preferential trading partners, Washington continues to stress that the three-way security coordination should be preserved. Seoul is considering terminating its bilateral intelligence sharing agreement with Japan called Jecheon later this month as a countermeasure to Japan's export curbs. Asked whether there's a separate intelligence sharing agreement among South Korea, the U.S. and Japan that can replace Jecheon, the State Department told Voice of America that it's crucial the three countries keep their strong partnership intact so they can face regional challenges, namely North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, North Korea has been firing missile after missile over the past couple of weeks, but this behavior has done little to dampen Washington's enthusiasm for dialogue with the regime. In fact, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Wednesday he's hopeful the two sides will resume their negotiations soon. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Speaking to reporters at the U.S. State Department on Wednesday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he's confident the U.S. and North Korea will resume denuclearization negotiations in the coming weeks.
President Trump's and this administration's strategy with respect to North Korea haven't changed. Our effort is to achieve the full final denuclearization of North Korea. We are hopeful that in the coming weeks we'll get back to the negotiating table to achieve that.
Pompeo's optimism comes despite North Korea conducting 4 short-range ballistic missile tests over the past couple of weeks in protest over ongoing joint military exercises between Seoul and Washington. According to the top U.S. diplomat, as long as the North doesn't test nuclear weapons or ICBMs, the Trump administration is generally content.
We watch the actions that they're taking, the actions that are taking place inside of North Korea, and we are mindful that when we came in, there was nuclear testing taking place. That has not occurred. There aren't long-range missiles being fired. Those are both good things. Now the task is for us to deliver on what the 2 leaders agreed to back in June of last year in Singapore.
The leaders of North Korea and the U.S. agreed to resume working-level denuclearization talks when they met at the inter-Korean border in June. However, the talks have yet to take place, despite earlier expectations they would restart in mid-July. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
According to President Trump, South Korea and the United States are discussing how to share the costs of South Korea's defense next year, and he says Seoul has agreed to pay a lot more for the stationing of American troops here. But Seoul says, in fact, those negotiations have not started yet. Kan Young-woo reports.
President Trump says South Korea has agreed to sharply increase its contribution for the shared cost of keeping the roughly 28,000 American troops stationed on the Korean peninsula.
South Korea and I have made a deal where they're paying a lot more money and they're going to pay a lot more money, and the relationship is a very good one. But I felt all along, I felt for years it was a very unfair one. So they've agreed to pay a lot more, and they will agree to pay a lot more than that. And we're with them. We're with them.
Trump tweeted earlier in the day that talks to increase Seoul's contribution had begun. The U.S. leader also said South Korea is a very wealthy nation that now feels obligated to contribute to the defense it receives from the U.S. military. However, shortly after Trump's tweet was posted, Seoul's foreign ministry said negotiations on the special measures agreement, a bilateral deal between South Korea and the U.S. to share the cost of American forces in Korea, have not started. The ministry said that during U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton's visit to Seoul last month, South Korea and the U.S. agreed to proceed with the issue in a rational and fair direction, adding the 2 sides plan to discuss the finer details in the negotiations. The ministry also said it's working on selecting its next chief negotiator and forming a task force. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
New U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper is due to arrive in South Korea shortly for one-on-one talks with his South Korean counterpart slated for tomorrow. Kim Jecheon introduces the issues they're likely to discuss.
Seoul's Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do and visiting U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper are expected to share their evaluation of security-related issues concerning the Korean peninsula, as well as discuss the main agendas regarding the South Korea-U.S. alliance at the upcoming meeting on Friday. Seoul's defense ministry said that includes the envisioned transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul and the 2 countries' cooperation for the establishment of lasting peace and the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Media outlets in South Korea have speculated that the 2 sides will share their assessment of North Korea's newly developed short-range ballistic missiles and discuss ways to better counter North Korea's evolving missile threats. The 2 sides are also expected to discuss the South Korea's participation in the U.S.-led coalition to secure shipping routes in the Strait of Hormuz, as well as renewing the military information sharing pact between South Korea and Japan. But the ministry said on Thursday the deployment of medium-range weapons in Asia and cost sharing for stationing American troops in South Korea are not expected to be discussed in detail by the 2 chiefs in their upcoming meeting. Seoul's defense ministry said it plans to release details of their talks on Friday, including the name and duration of the South Korea-U.S. combined military exercise taking place this month. The 2 sides kicked off a preliminary session on Monday in the run-up to their summertime command post combined exercise, meant to test South Korea's initial operational capability for the envisioned OPCON transfer.
Esper is visiting South Korea as part of his 5-nation trip to the Asia-Pacific region. It's his first overseas trip since taking office last month. Kim Ji-yeon,
Arirang News.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang says if North Korea keeps its denuclearization pledge, it'll lead naturally to a range of inter-Korean economic cooperation. Moon was speaking today with two Italian lawmakers who chair bilateral parliamentary friendship associations Italy maintains separately with Seoul and Pyongyang. Moon said North Korea is an attractive place for investment that will be able to provide fresh life for the global economy. Now, he said is an opportunity for Pyongyang because the U.S. is willing to talk with it, while the Moon Jae-in administration is also promoting its peace drive. The Italian lawmakers are in Seoul following a three-day trip to North Korea, where they met with officials including Lee Jong-hyuk, the vice chairman of Pyongyang's Korea Asia-Pacific Peace Committee. They said they think highly of President Moon's engagement with North Korea, but they feel there's been lack of real progress due to Washington. Samsung Electronics has unveiled its highly anticipated new smartphone, the Galaxy Note 10. It goes on sale in a couple of weeks, and it has some cool new features, like the ability to take pictures of things in 3 dimensions. Our Lee Min-sun reports.
Samsung Electronics has unveiled its new Galaxy Note 10 and its 6.8-inch jumbo version, the Note 10 Plus. Nearly 4,000 people attended Samsung's Galaxy Note 10 Unpacked event at the Barclays Center in New York to see the unveiling on Wednesday. At a press conference afterward, Samsung's mobile chief Ko Dong-jin expressed concerns that Japan's recent export curbs could affect the launch of new premium smartphones down the road. At the same time, Ko said he expects the new flagship model will help boost earnings in the second half of the year. The new models are packed with new features, including air actions, which can detect gestures like users flicking or swinging the phone's S Pen from afar. Users can customize the S Pen's controls to play games or launch applications using gestures without touching the screen. The Galaxy Note 10 has become a more powerful tool for creators with the integration of augmented reality and 3D technology into the camera. Its 3D scanner feature is a groundbreaking first for the Note series. It can scan an object and turn it into a movable 3D rendering.
Actually now taking AR, so augmented reality, to a new level with the S Pen with AR Doodle. So if you want to send customized images or messages to friends and family, you can take the S Pen and actually draw right on the screen on top of a person or even a place, and it will follow them throughout the picture. So if I wanted to draw some new eyebrows on myself or a hat, I could send that selfie.
The souped-up Note 10 Plus has a 7.5% boost in battery capacity over the Note 9. The Note 10 will retail at $949, while the larger Note 10 Plus will cost you an extra $50 or so. Both models come in 3 colors, and they will go on sale worldwide starting August 23rd. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
China's basic exchange rate has weakened to 7 yuan per dollar for the first time in 11 years. China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, announced today it set the yuan at 7.0039 to the dollar, 0.06% weaker than the previous day's 6.9996. The last time it took more than 7 yuan to buy a dollar was in May 2008, as the world was slipping into a financial crisis. A weaker yuan is largely seen as the result of the escalating trade spat between the U.S. and China, as well as concerns over the slowing growth of the Chinese economy. Every year, the city of Jecheon, about 2 hours from Seoul, hosts a film festival where all the movies are in some way related to music. And this year's edition is the biggest yet. Our Won Jong-hwan has the story.
The Jecheon International Music and Film Festival has been held every year since 2005 in the city of Jecheon, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, screening outstanding music-based films from dramas and documentaries to animations and experimental films. This year's festival runs from Thursday until August 13th, with Jecheon's beautiful Cheongpungho Lake as a fitting backdrop. And one of the committee members says, this time, visitors will be able to get closer to the festival than ever before.
This year marks the festival's 15th anniversary. And under the slogan of Into the Citizens, we've prepared some programs to be held in downtown to get even closer to the visitors.
This year's festival is expected to be the largest in the festival's history, with more than 120 films from nearly 40 countries, including Japan, being screened. In fact, as the boycott of Japanese goods and content gains momentum in Korea, a couple of days ago, Jecheon City Council demanded that Japanese titles be removed from this year's lineup. But the organizers of the festival confirmed on Thursday that there is no change from the original schedule and that they will not boycott Japanese films. And besides the screening of the films, the JIMF plans to celebrate Korea's warm midsummer days and nights with a packed program. Visitors can enjoy musical performances on an outdoor stage with some music concerts from renowned performers such as Haze and Hwisung. And besides the dazzling One Summer Night music events for the fans, visitors can have a chance to connect with artists at the JIMF Live Music Talk, where artists and guests will tell stories and explain the reasons behind their work. The Global Music and Film Festival, which is the only one of its kind in Asia, will provide visitors with more than just films, as it has done for the past 15 years. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스.
President Moon has expressed hope that Korea can further promote ties with Uzbekistan. His comments came as he met with the newly elected chair of Uzbekistan's Senate, Tanzila Narbayeva, in Seoul earlier today. Moon added that he hopes her trip will further facilitate the special strategic partnership between the two nations. The Senate leader thanked the president and the South Korean people for their hospitality. The U.S. government has approved a potential $800 million deal with South Korea for 12 MH-60R multi-mission helicopters. The Pentagon's Defense Security Cooperation Agency says the deal also includes related equipment such as radar and GPS. The DSCA claims the sale will support Washington's diplomatic policies and bolster the South Korean Navy's anti-submarine and search and rescue missions. Seoul's Defense Procurement Agency will evaluate proposals from bidders before announcing its decision by early next year. A new report shows that a quarter of the world's population is living in regions with extreme water stress. According to World Resources Institute, 17 countries were facing a water crisis, including India, Iran and Botswana. More than 30 big cities like Seoul, Los Angeles and Tokyo are also being warned to prepare against a water crisis. A dozen more cities are expected to experience the same fate over the next 11 years. 4 royal palaces, the Cheongmyo Shrine in Seoul and royal tombs across the country will open to the public for free from this Saturday to the 25th. This is to celebrate the 74th anniversary of National Liberation Day, which is next Thursday, and also to boost local tourism. During the 16-day period, entrance to Deoksugung and Changgyeonggung palaces at night will be free of charge. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now where we take a look at Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of When in Korea or Wink with Justin.
인기가요 샌드위치 or idol sandwich actually became popular because during the shoot of a popular music program in Korea, all of the idols and stars that were involved in the shoot would always come to the shop inside and snack on these sandwiches. Okay, so to get started, alright, so first we'll be starting with, of course, the white bread. We'll be needing 4 slices. And we're gonna quickly cut off the crusts or the sides of each slice of white bread. And then we'll move on to the cabbage salad, which is just going to be a mixture of mayonnaise, cabbage, and carrots. Wash it nice and clean, just dry it out. And we're going to put in all the carrots. We'll be finishing off the cabbage salad. And for mayonnaise, you just put as much as you want, all right? Just mix in the cabbage and the mayonnaise. All right, so next we need the egg salad sauce type salad. Yeah, also with mayonnaise, but with crab meat.
어디 보니까 계란을 이렇게 한 다음에 밀면서 약간 프레셔를 가하면서 이렇게 밀면은
And a little. So we're gonna smash the eggs. We're gonna mash it around. Okay, next we'll be adding the crab meat. 약간 손으로 찢는 게 빠를 것 같아. I think we need a little more mayonnaise, actually. Okay, so now is the easiest part. We have all the ingredients ready. We'll make one sandwich with the egg salad. So we finished one side. Next, we'll be adding the crab salad on this side. We'll be adding this. Boom, there we go. 진짜 맛있는데요? This is 4 slices of bread plus eggs, some mayonnaise, jam with sugar, so a lot of carbs and sugar and energy. So now that I think about it, I can see why this would actually be a helpful meal or snack to the idol stars. All right, everybody, thanks so much for watching Wink Winning Korea once again, and I'll see you next week.
It was a scorching day and the humidity didn't make things better.
But it seems like we have to endure these conditions just a little bit longer. For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Hi guys. Now, although today was Ipchu in Korea, a seasonal milestone that marks the advent of autumn, the whole nation was issued with a heat wave alert, with Seoul upgrading its heat wave alert to heat wave warning. Now, along with constant showers, a stuffy, humid, and hot Friday afternoon is in store, with temperatures in Korea tomorrow expected to rise higher levels over there in Beijing. Now, it's going to be an uncomfortable night too, with Seoul and almost all regions in the country waking up to at least 24 degrees Celsius. We are most likely to have a repeat of today's weather tomorrow, hot and sunny, with Seoul reaching up to 34 degrees and a degree or so higher for southern regions such as Daegu and Gyeongju. Now, further down south, Typhoon Lekima and Krosa are side by side heading up north. Now, Typhoon Lekima is inching closer and growing stronger by the day, and the storm isn't expected to influence the nation directly, but we need to keep an eye on its trajectory for a few more days, as it can easily make a detour and land on the Korean peninsula. Now, I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Stay tuned for News in Depth coming up next.